Disclaimer, this is the most densely packed Reinhardt guide you will find on the internet. The reason why this video does not have over 10,000 views is because I don't regurgitate the exact same shit that every other YouTuber does, so I strongly encourage you to watch till the end so you can gain the best understanding of Reinhardt possible in the shortest amount of time. If there's one thing that you take away from this video, it's this. Reinhardt is a low range, low mobility tank who is unbeaten in close range thanks to his high sustain, hammer and shatter. Utilize your typical Reinhardt mechanics like fire striking around corners, playing aggressive when you have armor, and having a full shield when you engage to beat the enemy Reinhardt and to charge your shatter quickly. And when you can't play against a Reinhardt, be creative with your pin. Use it to hunt down enemy flankers, destroy the enemy dive tank when he dives your team, and to clear high ground so that the enemy DPS can't get close. Reinhardt's primary fire, Torb's hammer but better, is a massive rocket hammer that deals 85 damage in a 5 meter radius that can cleave multiple enemies at once. Firstly, you can extend the range of Reinhardt's swing by turning your camera in the same direction that Reinhardt swings. The hammer also has a bit of knockback, meaning if you land a big shatter, you can line up multiple heroes. I will get onto more usage with Reinhardt's hammer in the playstyle section of this video. Reinhardt's first ability, the Barrier Boy, is a 1200 health point barrier that decreases your movement speed by 30% and regenerates at 144 shield per second after 2 seconds of not using the shield. The most important thing that you watching this video, I don't care if you're Grandmaster, the thing you need to absolutely get down with your shield is shield management. Please, for the love of God, stop using shield for no reason, especially at the beginning of fights where you're not even using your shield to take or hold space. If you're not pushing or retreating as Reinhardt, don't use your shield.
Careful. If you're shielding, you're intending to push. Right now, you are not intending to push, so I don't want you shielding. Save your resource, use natural cover, and now when you want to push, you'll have shield to play with, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Like, this is good here. I mean, you theoretically, I think, could be swinging again here, but, like, do you see how, like, this is really uncomfortable for them? They wish that the shield wasn't in front of them, because you guys are actively pushing them.
This can become especially important when trying to block the enemy shatter, and there's many clips back in Overwatch 1 where this easily costs teamfights.
Look how low your shield's getting. Your shield's low. Your shield's 1100, you go for another Firestrike, and you've been above 400 health the entire time. So now, in this fight, do they have Shatter? Yes! They have hammer, and before the fight even began, you put your shield to 1100 HP.
Dude's frozen.
They've got hammer!
Now with that out of the way, here's 6 vital and fundamental tips to help maximize your shield management. Firstly, learn how to shield hop. This is simply done by jumping forward when you shield, which is done because you cover the same amount of distance in a shorter period of time, meaning you save some shield. The second tip is to stop flashing your shield in front of the enemy team for no reason. This can prevent you from being able to regenerate it in the first place and can really become damaging to your gameplay, because if you're never letting your shield regenerate, you're never going to be able to go in aggressively. The third, more advanced tip is to weave in your shield throughout the brawl to block and avoid enemy stuns and to block key cooldowns. Thankfully, in Overwatch 2, there are a lot less stuns and there is one less hero compared to Overwatch 1, meaning it's noticeably easier to track key cooldowns. With that being said, you absolutely need to block things like Ana's nade and sleep dart, even with Kiriko in the game, because a well-timed nade can easily lead to a lost teamfight. The fourth tip, which is admittedly more niche and quite old, is to utilize the angle of your shield to help guide your teammates out of danger.
One of the things that you can do is if you're trying to shield from here, but you want to protect an ally while they're going into that room, use the angle of your shield to guide them into it.
The final tip is that you can block infinite amounts of burst damage, such as Diva Bomb, even if your shield is extremely low. This is simply done by shielding as soon as the burst damage occurs. Reinhardt's second ability, Hellboy, is a flaming projectile that Reinhardt tosses in a straight line, piercing enemies that deals 90 damage. Reinhardt has 2 charges of this ability, each on 6-second cooldowns. Thankfully, Firestrike is relatively straightforward. In 90% of cases, just Firestrike around corners, because corners are the hot spots of the map, meaning that's where most players are going to be playing around. Here's a clip of myself explaining that. Sux quite usefully describes corners as hot spots of the map, where most players will be playing around. Not to mention, Firestriking corners doesn't really require much mechanical skill. And of course, you also want to be casting your Firestrike before turning a corner first, then tossing it after the short cast time to minimize how much your hitbox shows. Also, you can do a swing Firestrike combo, which gives you the most amount of damage in the shortest time possible. As a general rule of thumb, you should not be Firestriking or even swinging when you have no armor. This is because in Overwatch 2 especially, armor can be a safety mechanism or a plan B for when you do take a ton of damage when you do Firestrike. Here's a clip of Flats, one of the biggest Reinhardt streamers, Firestriking when he had no armor, and you can see that he just gets obliterated. Reinhardt's third ability, Kamikaze, makes Reinhardt charge in a straight line for 50 meters, in which he can carry an enemy into a wall. If he pins an enemy into a wall, he deals 225 damage, whereas if he just bumps someone during this pin, it will deal 50 damage. Reinhardt can also cancel his pin. On a very basic level, a safe usage of pin takes into account two factors, distance and angle. Here's SVB explaining that.
Like I said, a short distance, and considering that my team were very close, I had the payload for cover, and the enemy team was kind of far away, it's a pretty safe charge. The enemy Rein, however, makes a charge like this. Immediately, you can see the difference in length. However, the other problem is that the enemy Rein hasn't considered the angle of the charge either, and now finds himself completely exposed to lots of source of damage from lots of angles.
Now this clip was made when Reinhardt couldn't cancel his pin, but you can still see people like Spilo, a professional coach, advising short distance pins to maximize safety.
And to be honest with you, you could do something like a short pin here, right? He doesn't have rock, short pin him into the wall, shield up again afterwards.
Because you are more bulky in Overwatch 1, and there's one less hero, and that you can cancel pins, you can actually afford to do more risky pins. More specifically, the pins that the best Reinhardts in the world will suggest you do is to trade backlines, as Lhcloudy gives an example of here.
And here, because I know that there's like 2 people in my spawn. Like 2 of my teammates just died here. If I just sit on the point, I'm going to lose. The fight went from them killing 2 on our spawn, from me killing their 10, and forcing their Sorcerer to go back all the way here.
However, another usage of pin which is contradictory to what Cloudy says are peel pins seen in the Overwatch League. People like Lhcloudy have publicly stated that you shouldn't be peeling on Reinhardt, yet you'll constantly see pro players like Hardy pin straight into his own backline to help peel against the dive. So why is this? Why is there a disparity in the first place? Well, firstly, let's compare the mobility of each enemy backline. In the examples Lhcloudy gives of trading backlines, he always pins immobile targets like Zen or Ana, but in the Overwatch League, you can't really do that because they're running a Lucio who will boop you away and speed away from you. The second main factor is risk versus rewards. In Lhcloudy's example, his break had rally, meaning there's not a big risk in him trading backlines instead of peeling. The final main factor between trading pins and peel pins is likelihoods, more specifically, the likelihood that you actually land the pin on the tank. If you don't even think you're going to land the peel pin in the first place, you might as well trade backlines. There are also other factors like ranked versus coordinated environments, the competency of each player, and the map you're on, but that's the general gist of it, and hopefully that adds more detailed nuance to Cloudy's original points. You can also obviously pin cancel people off the map, just make sure you swing after you cancel the pin for the extra knockback. Reinhardt's ultimate, Earthquake, makes Reinhardt slam his hammer into the ground, taking half a second to cast, travelling up to 20 meters and dealing 50 damage with a 2.5 second stun. An enemy hit in the epicenter of his Shatter receives 200 extra damage. The most important thing with Shatter is to maximize the probability of you landing it and to maximize the probability of you confirming a kill. Let's focus on that first part of the equation first. There are 5 main ways to increase the chance of you landing Shatter. The first is simple but specific. If you're playing against Reinhardt, play close and aggressive, using Shatter when he Firestrikes. Rein has 2 Firestrikes now, so this should be easier than ever to do. The reason for doing this when he Firestrikes is because Reinhardt obviously can't cancel his Firestrike, and the reason for playing close is to minimize the effect of Shatter's travel time. You don't want to be shattering 20 meters away, only for that Reinhardt to eventually block it. The second way is to shatter an overextending or unaware target. This can be someone off-angling or flanker focused on diving your backline, unaware of your shatter. The third way is to play dirty, as Spilo explains here.
Don't fight clean. No honor. A lot of these whole mind games with Reinhardt and Shatter, they do matter in pro play, but a lot of the times, the Reinhardt that has the better shatters is the one that just fights dirty. You use your team. You use your speed boost. You're gonna try and flank Shatter. I'm gonna turn this corner and shatter this Reinhardt. Don't shatter the Reinhardt, shatter anybody else. And if you're gonna shatter the Reinhardt, ask for a sleep dart.
The penultimate piece of advice is to tailor your shatter to each composition you're playing against. So if you're playing against dive, because they're gonna be quite split, you're more likely to land your Shatter on a single target, as ioStux explains here.
So now we need to look for smaller shatters. Previously we could be very greedy. Now shattering just one person is fine, right? If you can land a shatter on the enemy Winston, pin him into a wall and kill him, that's a really good shatter in this context.
Lastly, be decisive with your slams to help maximize the number of people you hit, as I give an example of here. Like, as soon as he turns around here, as soon as you see this, Shatter needs to be now. Like, you have plenty of time to get the Shatter there. He wasn't even thinking about holding up his shield. Like, you could have easily won this team fight, kill the Reinhardt and kill the Mercy, deny the res. Even if she gets the res, you probably still win this fight anyways. Your Echo dies, right? Because you're too slow with Shatter. You're too slow. Now onto the second half of the equation, maximizing the killing. The easiest way of doing this is just timing your Shatter with when either team engages. Since your team is engaging, there should be at least one other teammate helping you follow up on your slams. If you have slammed multiple enemies, to maximize your kills, swing, then crouch, then Firestrike. This should do over 200 damage, which means that you should kill any squishy hero. The reason for crouching before you Firestrike is so that the bottom of your Firestrike hitbox manages to hit enemies on the ground, and as mentioned prior, you also want to abuse the slight knockback from your hammer to align enemies in a straight line for that juicy Firestrike. You can also use pin at the very end of Shatter to help build some ult charge for your next Shatter, though if you absolutely need to confirm a kill on a single target, just pin them as soon as you've shattered them. So that's the main part to your own Shatter. I do want to mention flank shatters. There's this old but gold clip I used on King's Row in my 2020 Reinhardt guide, which still hits. My advice for flank shatters is only go for them if you absolutely need to. So if Shatter is your only team's ultimate and the enemy have 5 ultimates, then I would go for it. I'll also mention some smaller details. Firstly, Shatter can travel underneath and above the payload. Secondly, due to the cast time, you can be stunned or hacked during this animation, hence make sure you don't telegraph your Shatter that you might get stunned out of it. Cooldown track both bubbles from Zarya to avoid accidentally shattering into a bubble. Lastly, only jump before Shatter to shatter past the shield. Otherwise, don't jump, as this will provide a bigger window for the enemy Reinhardt to block Shatter. Speaking of blocking Shatter, the main piece of advice is that it's way easier to block a Shatter if you anticipate it coming. Think of those Zen players who reactively use Transcendence in response to EMP. They can do it because they anticipate the EMP coming. The next question is, well, how do you anticipate Shatter? And the main part to it is to roughly ult track the enemy Reinhardt and to adjust your aggression based on whether he has Shatter. You probably don't want to go balls to the wall swinging against the enemy Reinhardt if he has Shatter and you don't. Some psychological ways to block Shatter is to bully the opposing Reinhardt with hammer swings, being prepared to shield his Shatter. You can also feint by pretending that you're oblivious of the enemy Reinhardt, then quickly turning around once you anticipate the enemy Reinhardt shattering you. The last tip is to shield hop backwards to prevent the enemy Reinhardt jump shattering past your shield. Now onto the playstyle, positioning and compositional section. A vital fundamental is to clear high grounds to enable your DPS to use it and to disable it away from the enemy team, as Spilo explains here.
Here's where the Reaper is. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. If you path high ground and you find this Reaper, what is going to happen?
He's gonna wraith out.
He's going to wraith out. You're going to beat him with your hammer and he's going to run away. Not only did you force his wraith, what did you also do for your team? You cleared space. Yes, that's it right there. You see how that's making space?
Yeah.
He wants that position because it's a good flank and it's a good corner. No hero in the game can match you toe to toe. You don't just walk down the choke and push the Sigma. Yes, that's technically creating space, but the most valuable space oftentimes is what's happening around you in a lot of these circumstances here.
People like Lhcloudy actually played Reinhardt in this fashion, even going as far as pinning across high ground as Reinhardt on maps like Gibraltar, because nobody can contest Reinhardt in this sort of close range. Another fundamental is that against dive heroes who are engaging onto your backline, you have 3 main options. Firstly, stand still and hold shield. Do this when you need to block ranged damage from Ashe, Widowmaker, Hanzo, Ana, etc. Secondly, trade backlines with your pin, or thirdly, use your pin to peel and cause chaos. I've already talked about this distinction in the pin section of this video, but in short, if you can actually get on top of an enemy squishy, like a Zen, you can trade backlines, but if you can't really do that, then you might want to do a peel pin instead.
They're playing a dive comp with like Kiriko Lucio, and there's a Winston jumping your backline, and then like a Genji on the flank, Tracer on the flank. What do? You hit him with your hammer. Sometimes the best thing you could do versus a composition where you can't push something is to literally go around the map and hunt that Genji. or hunt that tracer. They dive your team, pin in the middle of your team. Catch that monkey. Catch the tracer. Catch the Genji. Don't hit them, cancel your pin, just beat the crap out of them with your hammer. When we were playing Ryan comps, right, versus a lot of these Winston dive comps, Hadi played very much to try and disrupt and mess up the dives as possibly he could. He knew he couldn't shield a lot. He could shield a non-nade, but you can't even do that versus a Kiriko.
With positioning, there actually isn't too much to it. Stick to corners as much as you can, because corners allow you to regenerate your resources. Make sure your backline has line of sight when you push in, and don't be afraid to give up a corner or to retreat backwards if your team are at a disadvantage or vice versa. The main advantages or disadvantages will be positional, cooldown, HP, or numbers based. Other ones are like spawn advantage or spawn disadvantage, or who has the shatter advantage. Finally, the last bit of this guide, tank matchups. Reinhardt vs Winston, a neutral matchup for Reinhardt. Either block incoming damage like anti-nade as mentioned prior, or more likely, just swing your hammer at the enemy Winston or enemy flankers. As mentioned prior, you can see players like Hardy try his absolute best to outbrawl the Winston up close via the uses of his pin. Reinhardt vs Orisa, an unfavourable matchup for Reinhardt. For those who have watched my Orisa guide, you'll know that Orisa can basically stop anything Reinhardt can do. Her spear spin blocks your fire strikes and hammer swings, her javelin prevents you from pinning aggressively or even just closing the distance, and the cherry on the cake is that her fortify can block your shatter. However, you have a shield and Orisa doesn't, and you have more HP than Orisa, so on paper, as long as you can outlast the Orisa, and high damage heroes on your team like Sojourn can dome her Jupiter sized heads, you'll be good to go. Reinhardt vs Sigma, a neutral matchup for both of the tanks. If Ryan manages to close the distance, it's over for Sigma, but if Sigma manages to keep his distance, then there's not much Reinhardt can do. If you're struggling as Ryan to close the distance, especially on maps like Circle Royale, you can look to use your pin to quickly clear high grounds as mentioned prior, playing Reinhardt in a wacky manner. Just try not to get accretioned whilst doing so. Reinhardt vs D.Va, a similar matchup to Winston. Only difference I'd say is that because D.Va is more versatile and likes marking off angles more than Winston, look to clear and control high grounds early on to help support your DPS and to make the D.Va's life tough. Reinhardt vs Roadhog, a relatively neutral matchup. If you and Roadhog frontline, you win. You simply have more sustain, and if you block Hog's hooks, there's not too much you can do up close. However, Hog can easily fix this by just flanking and landing a hook, in which case, look to either match and mirror him, or to go on your own flank, hunting down those DPS targets up close. Reinhardt vs Wrecking Ball, again, a similar matchup to Winston, and arguably an even easier one, due to having no bubble unlike Winston. Punish Ball if he overstays his welcome, and I would definitely solo shatter him when he power drives. Reinhardt vs Zarya, a neutral matchup. Flats likes to describe Zarya as the off-tank Reinhardt, who trades out sustain for damage, which I can kinda see. Keep on closing the distance to Zarya to utilize the armor portion of your HP, as well as being able to land hammer swings. By being close to Zarya, you're also more likely to bait her bubbles just by the threat of being close, or you can do that with your fire strikes. Make sure to shatter her when you've tracked her using both bubbles. Reinhardt vs Doomfist, a favourable matchup for Reinhardt. Doomfist is just too squishy and doesn't deal enough damage to get past Ryan's sustain. Honestly, think about pinning Doomfist when he power blocks in the middle of your team and auto solo shatter him. He's quite a mobile target with respectable CC, but he's squishy enough for you to punish him easily, unlike Winston to a lesser extent. Reinhardt vs Junker Queen, a neutral matchup for Reinhardt. Junker Queen is unusual in that she can be close enough to deal damage, but far enough away from you to be unable to land hammer swings. So if you can bypass her lack of range and get close, forcing out her commanding shell early so she has to give space, she's actually not as big of a threat as you might think. Try and block her jagged blade and shield hop in rhythm to her scattergun shots to make it easier to close the distance. Well, that's it for the guides. If you enjoyed, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for the algorithm, and if this video helped to raise your IQ, feel free to share it with your friends to also raise theirs. Until next time.